suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back. I hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Monday night slash evening, depending on where it is that you're joining us from. Um, I hope you're doing okay. UEFA Champions League does get to return. Football continues in all aspects, in all respects. You know, what a thrilling weekend did we have? Juventus putting four past Inter Milan in that 4-3 victory. Hellas Verona sharing the spoils, of course, tonight in a goalless draw, while Como are leading Genoa by a goal to nil. Espanyol are leading Mallorca by 2-1. That game is ongoing. For those of you that care to know what's happening in as far as the Spanish La Liga is concerned. But anyways, before we go any deeper or any further, allow me have our audios tested and make sure that everything does check out before we move on. Meanwhile, do not forget to go to the channel and check out our under our video section. I did put out a video about why Manchester United shouldn't sack Ruben Amorim just yet, and I thought we should digest that topic a little further, given United's recent results over the weekend as they lost to Manchester City in the Manchester Derby by 3-0. But more importantly, the larger context of things, because that result in itself, while it may help define Manchester United and where they are, it's not enough to be yardstick for Man United to be sacking a manager. So you feel that in any case, if they are to make the decision, then it has to be based on more than just the loss to Manchester City. Because how many teams go to the Etihad Stadium and get beat there? So United should not be unique or should not be the outliers that losing to excuse me, that are losing to Man City should get you sacked. I do not believe that should be the case. But while that can be the case, in some respects, I do not think that result is enough. It's a good that it should be a God given that you just say, oh, we lost to Manchester United. We lost to Manchester City. Poor performance. On you go as a manager. You make that kind of decision? Yes or no? I do not believe certainly that you go on and make that. Hey, brother, how are you doing, Pedri? How has been your Monday? How is school going? How is school treating you? Congratulations about your victory against Valencia. Putting 6 past Valencia doesn't sound like it was a renewal of old rivalries as I would accustom them to be. If there are any games that you always knew are going to be high scoring games in the Spanish La Liga, is Real Madrid Valencia, Barcelona Valencia, those kinds of games. In recent times, Valencia have had their struggles, but I do. The last time, okay, not the last time, but that result speaks of them being as poor as they had been under Gary Neville as their manager. So that's the best way I can paint for you or can paint for one that picture. But beautiful game of football for Barcelona. So Pedri, give us your thoughts about that result, about your overall performance. I think the most impressive part for me is the fact that Barcelona managed to keep a clean sheet. If anything, for any worries that I may have for Barcelona, is that while they are very good offensively, defensively sometimes they can be very inefficient. And given that yesterday they were able to keep a clean sheet, never mind that it is against a sort of poorly run Valencia in recent times, there's credit that has got to go to that. You say it was very fun. Everyone looked good. It was surprised. I was surprised Valencia wasn't good because their team on paper is very capable. They've always been a capable opponent, and that's why I was surprised as pretty much as much you were surprised by the final score or by the outcome game, because even when they've been poor in recent times, usually they've managed to put in a performance against a team like Barcelona, against a team like Real Madrid, against an Atletico Madrid. It's that kind of game where you wouldn't be surprised if they tell you Barcelona won it 3-2 or 4-3. In that sense. But 6-0, I mean, 6-0 is just it's just as bad as it gets, really. Not just for Valencia, but I think in present day, but I think it sort of sums up all their struggles that they've gone through as they build equally their new stadium and things like that. They've struggled financially. We know that they've lost key players during that period, including most very recently. You look at a player like Christian Mosquera. I mean, he's a player that they never wanted to lose at that young age, at that kind of price, but they found their hands tied. And the reason part of why they were tied is because they couldn't get the player renewing a contract much earlier and things like that. So, anyways, on the other side of the aisle is Manchester United. Like I said, Manchester United. I mean, they are the topic of this conversation. While there is more to it than just that, of course, like I said, the UEFA Champions League gets underway tomorrow. PSG being the reigning champions, Arsenal are away to Athletic Bilbao, as we will see in the subsequent, discussions. But we will kick things off with Man United because Ruben Amorim continues to come under pressure because of a poor run of results. I said in our preview for the weekend that a report card that read one victory, one draw, and one loss after the opening 3 games of the season wasn't that bad, and it wasn't cause for much concern. You sort of felt that going into the weekend, they needed a result, whether it was a draw or a victory. It just needed not to be a loss. Otherwise, it then starts to look a bit of like a pattern like last season, because last season we saw Man United struggle, and in fact they never managed to do it, win 2 consecutive games in the Premier League. We're talking about a manager that is managed this Manchester United side through 31 Premier League games. 31 Premier League games, and out of all those, they've only managed to win what? 8, drawn 7, and lost 16. I mean, that's just a poor record. It's a poor record. I mean, that kind of record is what gets you sacked at Barcelona. It's what gets you sacked at Bayern Munich. It's what gets you sacked at Real Madrid. You remember Julian Nagelsmann when he was being let go at Bayern Munich and they brought in Thomas Tuchel? I mean, he hadn't had that poor run of results. And yet, for some reason, Manchester United are managing to, keep it in and say, yeah, we will accept the kind of position we are in today, and then perhaps rebuild. And you would urge on one hand that it is the right sort of mentality to have, that it is the right sort of way to go about it, to sort of suffer in the short term for you to win in the long run. It's a case of losing some battles and to win a war. That's perhaps one way you would argue it. While that in itself could be true in some respect, for Manchester United, it doesn't feel like they are winning any, they're not winning a battle or two there, because winning one match every single month is not how you get it done. I'm sure Manchester United fans would long to see a period of time when they go and win at least 3 games, 4 games on the speed. Just have that bit of momentum. Just have that bit of reflection that we are the big team that we think we are, But things that have happened in recent times are not sort of showing that. And meanwhile, as we speak, 2 Arsenal legends or former players in Francesc Sola Fabregas and Patrick Vieira are going toe to toe in the Italian Serie A with Patrick Vieira in the dugout for Genoa, while Cesc Fabregas is on the other side of the dugout of Como. For those of you that care to remember, Patrick Vieira always does remind us that it was Cesc Fabregas that literally got him kicked out of Arsenal, because of his talent, and that's the biggest compliment you can pay him. So those two are going toe to toe, and Fabregas is leading up against Patrick Vieira by goal to nil, and Como at home in their small stadium there, and yeah, but Genoa really trying to press or to push for an equalizer, it's just not yet coming their way. Anyways, so back to the topic that it is Manchester United. Going into the weekend, given that Manchester City had lost 2 previous games in the Premier League, losing, that meant that they had lost at least 3. They had lost 2 of their opening 3 fixtures, which wasn't a very good report card. You could easily argue that Manchester City needed to win more than Man United needed to win. First of all, bearing in mind how long Pep Guardiola has been at Manchester City, bearing in mind that it is a project rebuild for Pep Guardiola, and everything that you could think of, the standards that they, Manchester City, have set for themselves in recent times. But also on the other side, on the other hand, you knew that you're talking about a Manchester United side that went to the Etihad Stadium last season and beat up against this Manchester City side by 2-1. Coming into this game, one would easily argue that Manchester City looked to be in a worse shape than Manchester United. And yet it was Manchester City that blew away Man United. And yet we are still not surprised. So that's the kind of inconsistency that Manchester United promises you or is giving us at the moment. We know that United are capable of winning big games. We know that United, on their good day, are one of the best teams that you can play against, or one of the toughest opponents that you can play against. And yet, the early signs into the season, take away that game that they did play against Arsenal at Old Trafford, and all the other performances have not been good enough. Because winning 3-2 against Burnley, a newly promoted side, isn't the kind of result that earns you praises. That's a narrow escape. In any case, we all remember they needed a late penalty from Bruno Fernandes to win that one. So they've not looked good. And the question becomes, what is the problem? Is it with the manager? Is it with the players? Is it with the system? Or is it with the style of play? Now, I'm inclined to believe that it's neither the system nor is it the players. Now, on a given day, you can't pick on individual players to question their own performances. That does happen to any team. Every time a team loses, certainly there are players that you think should have done better. So, for example, yesterday, Nusa Mazaroi did not have a good day in office. Luke Shaw did not have a good day in office. Really. So, that's the easy part, or the easy one to sort of try and judge, to try and think about. But when you look at the broader context of things, you feel that it's more than just the player. It's more than just the system. And I've said this before. This 3-4-2-1 kind of system, or 3-5-2 system, depending on which way you define it, or the manager chooses to assemble his players and how they set up. It does have its challenges, like any other system. All systems have their own loopholes. But the key thing to think about in this particular case is for Ruben Amorim, it has caused him to play some players out of position, and playing them out of position or where they are most comfortable at. Because again, somebody may call me out and say, But you've urged before that in modern day game, it doesn't matter where you play for as long as you play. That's true. But also, if you are constantly being played in a position where you're not delivering to your absolute best, then it's upon the manager to get the best out of you. And if that means playing you in a certain position, then so be it. So in this particular case, we know that Manchester United do have a captain in Bruno Fernandes, their most creative player, the best goal scorer, and yet Ruben Amorim has chosen to deploy him a little much deeper into the midfield to play as the number 8, as opposed to playing him as a 10, where he does thrive the most. So, who do we blame on that? That's for the money to blame on the manager. Then, two, when you look at players like Andre Onana, I mean, he makes it look easy, or that people constantly pointed a finger at him, and yet given Altai Bayer's performance yesterday, he just did not click. It just wasn't his day. He had a bad day on office. Pretty much what you could say of Onana on any given day. But I've always argued, singling out a single player sometimes often sees you negate the responsibility of all the other players on that pitch in regards to playing as a team. You see, a team is like a chain. All the components of that chain play almost an equivalent part of it coming together into what it is. You know, that's what it is. So for Manchester United, if you go and pick out on a goalkeeper tomorrow, you pick up out on a defender tomorrow, you pick out on Bruno Fernandes for him failing to track back, and then you pick up on a Benjamin Sesko, that's the easy part. That's the easy part. That's the amateur part. And that's why for me, I'm not looking at it that way. Are these players well suited to Ruben Amorim's system? We know that players can play really any system because whatever the system you play, the ball is still round. It is still 90 minutes, 45 plus added time. We know that the ball needs to cross the line to be counted as a goal. We know a tackle is a tackle. We know a good pass is a good pass. Those are the basics. Those are the basics. Now, I was reading somewhere and somebody made the argument that the problem with Manchester United is not the system. Like I've argued myself, it is not the system, it is not the players, it is not the manager, but it is the style of play. What kind of style of play are Manchester United tailored for? Now, traditionally, we know for a fact that Manchester United have always been a counter-attacking team. Ferguson era, Jose Mourinho era, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, all that. Come to think of it, in that respect, it's always been counter-attacking football where they managed to deliver the most. You remember Daniel James when he was sort of low-key thriving at Manchester United? It was for his pace. Marcus Rashford, he thrived because of his pace in a system that plays counter-attacking football. You know, that's how good they were. That's what made them good. The style of play, you know. So it doesn't matter if tomorrow he reverts to a back four, which sometimes I feel he should. And because practically that's me trying to say that it doesn't have necessarily to abandon the entire back three, wing backs, double pivot kind of system, two number 10s and a striker. What I'm saying is that assess your opponent and know, because that back three in itself can become a back four. Oh my word. Genoa have just gotten an equalizer in this game. 92nd minute of the game, or sorry, 90 plus 2 minutes of the game, get themselves an equalizer just a minute after Como had a player sent off with a red card, and Genoa had themselves an equalizer. Oh my word. That's the ugly part of football, that you dominate affairs, you dominate play, and you sort of take the lead for as long as you can, and then suddenly you lose it in a blink of an eye, and they've lost it. That game is coming into the 95th minute and or 50th minute of added time, something like that. So, anyways, back to United. So, style of play. A Manchester United players suited for a programmatic kind of style of play. Counter press that is really, really very effective. The kind of system that is a possession based. Is that the kind of system that I tailor to? Are they cut out for that, or they are more comfortable in a counter-attacking kind of system? Is that what they are strong for? Is that what they are good at? Now, Ruben Amorim has not deployed that kind of system before, but when you have players like Brandon Bomo with his speed, Amadou Diallo with his speed, Bruno Fernandes can give you that pass over the top or even a long pass, and you can sort of think about it and say, maybe that kind of system would suit Man United. And again, it's easy to argue because Ruben Amorim hasn't tried it out. But what if it did and it did not work out? That's why yesterday he told you he's not going to change his philosophy. And for me, because philosophy is a broader context. But as a manager, there's certain things you ought to change about the game when you know that this is not working. That's why I advise to have a plan A, plan B, and possibly a plan C. Because we all know that your plan may fail to work out. That your plan may fail to work out. And if it does fail to work out, then what are you reverting to? If, for example, you say we're going to do our counter press against Manchester City in this kind of format, we will lead with the front three, the two number 10s and the striker, and then we will have one of our wing backs invert into midfield, create a belt of three. That's the number 8, number 6, number 10, and one of the wing backs to make up the belt of 3. And then you have your back 3, who one of the defenders will retreat to create a back 4. So you press in a 4-3-3 kind of system. Or it could be that the striker, along with the two number 10s and the number 8, form a particular shape to lead the counter press of 4. Because possibly I'm thinking you have 4 defenders, you want to position yourself in a way that literally man marks them, although with your numbers more concentrated with where the ball is. So, again, it's about the style and how effective you can be with that style, So, Man United have so many questions lingering over their heads, and they're not going to go away. Ruben Amorim, for as long as the results are not coming, there's going to be questions. And for him, the longer the results take to come, the more pressure he's going to find himself under. Because, in any case, if you look at it this way, the next game is up against Chelsea. The next game is against Chelsea. If you go and lose against Chelsea, that's more pressure. And then by the October international break, you only have one win. Trust me, there's going to be pressure because you are a big team. You are a team at the stature of Manchester United. That's a world brand of football. That's a global brand of football. So you must be getting results. Now, in the short run, it won't matter how you get the result. It will matter that you get the results. In the long run, it will matter how you get the results, because then that speaks to style of play. That speaks to a build, what you build. You see how Jurgen Klopp, what he did with Liverpool, that when Arne Slot came in, he built onto that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but literally most of the managers that have walked through Manchester United ever since the departure of Sir Alex Ferguson have literally had to do it their own way. You know, the game between Como and Genoa has ended in a 1-1 draw. So it is what it is. Then Espanyol are leading Mallorca, you know, Espanyol are leading up against Mallorca. That game is also ongoing. I don't know if Pedro is still with us. He would have, given us his thoughts of that. But Espanyol are leading the game by 3-2 against Mallorca. It's that close. It's that tight, Very, very impressive stuff. So, but anyways, so for me, for Manchester United, I believe one, the manager needs to adjust a few things here and there. He doesn't necessarily have to abandon his entire system. I think he needs to find a partnership that works, because that of Bruno Fernandes and anybody else who puts him along within the midfield does not bear the desired fruits. Because for me, I believe Bruno Fernandes is not an 8, cannot play an 8. I think you're better off playing Kobe Maino in that role than you would be wasting Bruno Fernandes. And then instead of bringing on Amadou Diallo, play Bruno Fernandes in that 10 role, that second 10 role. Because we know he can thrive there. We know he can pop up around the edge of the area, go for that long ball in goal, strike that ball neatly and it hits the back of the net. We know he's capable of providing an assist. We know he's capable of creating lots of chances. So put him within that area where it becomes easy for him to thrive, where it becomes easy for him to sort of do the things that he's capable of doing. Now, there is a big question. Why did Man United get rid of why did they get of Bruno Fernandes and use that money to spend on midfield? Yes, they needed attackers and they deployed well, spending over 70 million euros to land those in. And yet, here we are, 4 games in, was talking about them, and those front three are yet to deliver in Benjamin Sesko, Bani Bomo, and Matthias Kun. They are yet to deliver. So, but they needed a remedy for midfield. They needed a remedy for midfield, and they never got that. We know they wanted Carlos Baliba. At some point, they were linked with the potential move for Angelo Stiller from Stuttgart. There's another midfielder from Sporting CP who they were being linked with. We know there was talk of Adam Wharton at the start of the transfer window and things like that. We know there was a mention of Douglas Luiz, and yet none of it all bore fruit in the eyes of a Manchester United fan. So, some things need to change. Some things need to be adjusted. And that rests upon the shoulders of the manager. Because the funny thing about football is that if the majority are the ones in the wrong, which are players, it is still the manager that gets sacked. Why? Because it's easier to change one head than to change 25 heads. And that's the squad of players. 25 versus one head. So that's where it gets tricky. That's where it becomes a bit difficult. It becomes difficult that way. So for me, I'm of the view that he shouldn't be sacked. Not at the moment, because how different is it going to be a cycle for the next manager? David Moyes, first season in, senior players do not believe in him and his ideas and his philosophy. can't believe that he signed Marouane Fellaini from Everton, as though Wayne Rooney did not come from Everton, and things like that. And he goes before completing his first season. Ryan Giggs completes the season. In comes Jose Mourinho. First season in, brilliant. Second season, not given the desired tools. He's struggling. He's sacked. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer comes in. Good run of results as an interim. Possibly, what was it, 1922 games played without loss. And suddenly, he's a fan's favorite. Everybody was singing, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Hi, Peter Parker. What's up, champ? How have you been? Where have you been hiding all this while? It's been a minute, but it's always a pleasure to have you back. So, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I remember Rio Ferdinand advocating that he be given a 3-year contract, let him append his signature because he had been that good in the interim. He gets the job, does fairly well, and he subsequently sacks. That was when around 2021 he sacked. Now, in comes Eric Ten Hag, 2 seasons in, finishes 8th, but because he had won the FA Cup, people think cut him some slack, retain him, and then you interview managers who has potential replacements. Then you decide to stick with the manager that you already have, go on to back him heavily in the transfer window, and then 2 months into the season, you show him the exit. So, Man United need to convince us, bro, are you excited or not for UEFA Champions League? Obviously, I'm excited. I'm excited about UEFA Champions League. What do you think who's gonna to be the top scorer in the UEFA Champions League? Just in a bit. Let me conclude on Manchester United. Just in a bit. So, what is it to say that it's not going to be another cycle of a new manager, some of the same players, and things like that, and yet nothing changes? So I'll leave the larger debate to Manchester United fans for you out there to digest it and let us know. What are your views? Should Ruben Amorim be sacked? Should Manchester United count their losses as early as possible and move on? We have started hearing grumblings and rumors that apparently he wanted a different facet of players, that he would have preferred the goalkeeper Emi Martinez rather than Roy Antwerp's, Sene Lombs, that he would have preferred Oli Watkins as opposed to Benjamin Sesko. Because apparently those are players that are already well adapted to the league and would have had a quicker impact as opposed to the ones that have been bought in, So let's just wait and see. Anyways, quickly, let's move on to the UEFA Champions League. After all, we already have questions before us in regards to in regards to who we think is going to be, is going to be the top scorer for the UEFA Champions League. Now, if I'm being honest, that's a very, very difficult question to answer. And there is, for you say Lamine Yamal and Cole Palmer going to be top scorer. Not a Robert Lewandowski. What is it to say that Rafinha does not come back and he hits the ground run? Ousmane Dembele, Kylian Mbappe, why not them? What is it to say it's not going to be Alexander Isak? Anyways, you have your reasons, but I list all those names to show you how good goal scorers there are in the season in UEFA Champions League. Because the funny thing here is that among your 2 top picks in Lamine Yamal and Cole Palmer, none of them is a striker. They're both attacking midfielders. One plays on the right wing, the other can play on the right wing and as an attacking midfielder. So, Nick Volkmada at Newcastle, I'm not saying he's going to be, but I mean, you'd want to think about it. Maybe it's going to be Rasmus Højlund surprising us at Napoli. But anyways, all the speculative nature aside. If you had to press me, I'd say one, I'd go Alexander Isak because I'm convinced that Liverpool will go beyond the round of 16 this time around, and that could put him in the frame for the top scorers boot. Lamine Yamal, I don't want to disagree so much, but I still think Rafinha is cut out for crossing that ball all the line. You know. Anyways, guys, here's the run of fixtures coming your way tomorrow. PSV Eindhoven against Union Golise. I will be coming at 6:45 p.m. East African time, while Arsenal against Atletico Bilbao, same kickoff time. Bro, I'm scared of Inter Milan because the last time they beat Barcelona. Well, Simone Inzaghi is already out of the way. They're not the same Inter Milan they were last season. We come from a weekend where they just lost to Juventus by 4-3. In any case, Barcelona showed us that Inter Milan is capable of conceding as many goals as what? 6 goals? Because it was 3-3 and then they beat them 4-3. So, I do not think we should be scared of Inter Milan. And again, I'm just waiting to see what they are capable of being this season. With a new manager, I can't. I'm still waiting to see what Christian Chivu is able to make out of that team. I mean, because Simone Inzaghi, twice he took them to the finals of the UEFA Champions League in a space of 3 years, including winning the Scudetto last season but one. That's not an easy ask. So let's wait and see. But those are the early kickoffs. Arsenal will be in the early kickoff at 6:45 p.m. So beautiful game to look forward to. Then Benfica will be up against Karabakh at 9 p.m. Real Madrid will be up against Olympique Marseille. Tottenham Hotspur will take on Villarreal, while Juventus will entertain Dortmund. That's tomorrow, Tuesday. On Wednesday, Olympiacos will be up against Pafos at 6:45 p.m., while Bodo Glimt will travel to Slavia Praha at the same kickoff time. And then at 9 p.m., we will have Bayern Munich. Let me hope I'm right on this one, because I could argue that it's East African time, and yet it isn't. Let me cross check just to confirm, just to be very sure about those kickoff timelines. You said drinking water without a cup called Arsenal. Guys, the games are not kicking off at 6:45. It's 7:45 p.m. East African time, so not 6:45. Apologies on that. I realized the clock that I was using was a bit different. And then the other games will be kicking off at 10 p.m. East African time and not 9 p.m. as earlier mentioned. So apologies on that error. But at least we've managed to catch ourselves quickly for the corrections. So Bayern Munich up against Chelsea at 10 p.m. That's on Wednesday. While Ajax will take on Inter Milan at the same time. PSG will be at home against Atlanta, while Liverpool will be at home to entertain Atletico Madrid. Now, in a new twist of events, or in a new turn of events, this season we will be having Champions League games on Thursday night. Now, we predominantly have always known Thursday to be Ladies' Night / UEFA Europa League football, and subsequently the UEFA Conference League football. But this time around, we have a couple of games on Thursdays. Copenhagen at 7:45 up against Leverkusen, as Club Brugge will be up against Monaco at some kickoff time. Sporting CP will take on Kairati, that's at 10 p.m., while Newcastle will entertain Barcelona. Pedri, I wish you were here to tell us what are your expectations, or what your expectations will be when Barcelona take on Newcastle. I mean, Newcastle are going to be in for a run for their money. Manchester City will be up against Napoli. Manchester City will be at home. KDB, who has had a great start to the season, returning to the Etihad Stadium. Scott McTominay, of course, coming with that Napoli team. Meanwhile, Frankfurt will be up against Galatasaray still on Wednesday. So, I mean, there's plenty to look forward to. You say I'm watching from Egypt, bro. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure from Egypt. How is Egypt? The land of pyramids, the land where the Nile meets the Mediterranean Sea. You know, uh, I'm coming from Uganda, where we have the source of the Nile, and we are at the head and you're at the tail end of the Nile. How interesting that is. Anyways, all that action will be coming in the UEFA Champions League between Tuesday and Thursday. Meanwhile, I think it's finished here. Espanyol have beaten up against Real Mallorca by 3 goals to 2. That game is equally sealed, done and dusted between those two sides. Anyways, guys, it's been a bit of a long day. When Real Madrid gonna eat rice? Unfortunately, last I checked, I do not think Arsenal have Real Madrid in their path. I don't think so. But in any case, if God so wishes it, then we will wait for them to be cooked. Anyways, thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, Peter Parker, for chipping in tonight. It's been a bit of a long day. Allow me go and have a moment's rest, and I'll see you guys next time. Stay blessed for now, and I'll see you. Bye-bye for now. Let's meet again tomorrow morning for the early morning broadcast. That's at 9 a.m. East African time, and then subsequently in the night. I don't know what time we will get to do the broadcast, but possibly prior to the kickoff for the second half for the UEFA Champions League games that kick off at 10 p.m. Bro, listen. I'm listening. I'm all ears, Peter Parker. Before I sign out, I'm all ears before I sign out. So surprisingly, tell one joke on Arsenal. One joke on Arsenal. I think if Arsenal had Danny drinking water, the meal would be complete. The meal would be complete because they already have rice. So imagine they had drinking water with rice. Probably not the best of jokes, but yeah, that's the quickest I could think about. Anyways, thank you so much, Peter Parker, for the light moment that you've managed to accord us this evening. Always a pleasure to catch up with you and every single one of you that managed to chip in tonight. Pedri, Peter Parker, and those that never managed to, send in a comment but managed to leave a like. Those who didn't do either, it's always a blessing and a pleasure to know that you are following the conversation from wherever it is that you managed to catch the conversation from. Those that do watch the live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do not take your time for love and support for granted. We do appreciate you in a similar strength. Have yourselves a blessed night. Let's meet again tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.